Well, hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Maybe it's even good night. I hope you're all well as you're listening to our brand new podcast, Tradie Wife Life. I have an amazing guest today. I've spoken to this guest a couple of times, both on our previous incarnation of this podcast called Ladies in Business and also Tradies in Business. And then we've worked together quite a bit over the last 18 months or so. I'm bringing you some really interesting webinars and lots of information. Today, we are joined by Kristy-Lee from People Powered Business. How are you, Kristy-Lee?
Hey, Nick. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And you look fantastic in pink today. I hope everyone now goes to find the video.
Look for the video. Get a bit of power color going.
It looks fantastic. We are talking all things HR today, but we're also talking about, we wanted to have a look at AI and how it's assisting some of your current clients with some areas with their HR, which is just amazing to me. And we were also going to talk about why hiring now is a good idea. We're seeing a bit of reluctance in the marketplace around hiring with some of those interest rate rises, et cetera. And I feel like it'd be really valuable to have a look at what the opportunities are to our tradie wives and their businesses and what they could potentially be doing right now rather than getting stuck in some of that fear. But before we do that, Kristy-Lee, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be talking here today on the podcast?
Thanks, Nicole. That's a great question. So my name's Kristy-Lee, as Nick's already mentioned. I work with small to medium-sized businesses to help them avoid and overcome staffing stress and headaches. I help people to understand what it takes to hire the right team for your business, and then once you've got them, what to actually do with them next, and to make sure your business is protected, because the laws in Australia, unfortunately, are a little tricky for employers and don't necessarily favour employers. So we need to know how to navigate them so we're protected and we're doing everything we can. So I support business owners through my People Powered HR membership, my Power Boss coaching program, and through my one-on-one consultancy work. And I just have a belief that small business is the backbone of Australia and our businesses, and we employ most of the people. People love working for small business. And the reality is you can't have a successful small business and keep your sanity without the right team. So that's what I help people do.
That's a fantastic elevator pitch.
Oh, thanks.
I love that. I need to
make it up as I go.
So I think hiring can be one of those really polarizing opportunities for business owners. And we're already seeing, even with our client base, a bit of a reluctance to be thinking about hiring right now because the phones have stopped ringing or they're slowing down, because there is a bit of fear around the big R word that we don't talk about much here, because we feel like there is an opportunity for every business to continue with their growth path throughout all times, particularly trade businesses. We're really set in a position, I guess, of somewhat of power in these times, in that our services are still required and they need to be done by licensed professionals, which means there are still opportunities there for us. Yes, we might need to be a little nimble in how we do business and the people that we serve. However, the opportunities are still there, particularly if we start working now on things like marketing, ensuring we have the right team, our team is satisfied, so on and so forth. One of the issues that I see around HR that's really been, I guess, at the front of mind in the last 12 to 18 months has been a lack of people on the ground. It's really hard to even find someone to hire in the first place. And I'm already seeing that shift now, so that we do have people not necessarily flooding the marketplace yet, but they are coming back. However, we have a hesitation, of course, then to be putting someone on because maybe we're going into a recession, maybe we're not. Kristy-Lee, I'd really love your opinion on why now might be a great opportunity for business owners to be hiring.
It's a great question. I also like to avoid the R word because I don't like to buy into that. And I think we're in a state where we're just restabilizing. You know, we haven't been in a normal period. It's the economy. It goes up and down, has done so forever. Nothing's changing there. So this is just normal. And I definitely am seeing no signs of negativity in the market. You know, there's lots of positivity. And yeah, there's more people coming back into the market because there's a flow-on effect. So international students are coming back to Australia. That means the hospitality businesses are getting more staff, and there is a flow-on that kicks across to all different industries and markets. They're absolutely not flooding back. I wish they were, but we are seeing a little bit more. And don't forget, as a small business, you're a lot more, you're in a lot better position to be agile, to be adaptable in any market than a big business ever is. It takes them a lot of work to steer the ship around, which means they might need to lay people off. They might need to make redundancies. They might need to cut a project. we're in a great position as a small business to take advantage of that extra labour coming into the market, those extra people looking for work. So I'm a big believer that if you've had a steady flow of work and you, for the foreseeable future, have a steady flow of work, and you've got someone awesome who you would love on your team available, take them on. And I think the fear needs to go away when we reposition it as this is the right decision for now. It's not a forever decision. If you need to make a different decision about your team in 6 or 12 months' time, you absolutely can do that. But why hold everything else back now when it all looks like it's going to be fine just because the media is telling you to worry or because you're a little bit concerned? That's not forever. Nothing is ever forever when it comes to our team. So make the best decisions now, then you'll be in the best position, I should say, to reap the rewards of that as well. But if you've got someone awesome right in front of you, you should definitely be grabbing them right now if they're coming back into the market. And we always see shifts in the market at the beginning of the year. It's really normal. People take stock over the Christmas break. They make decisions in the first few months of the year around their future, and it might mean they're choosing to make a change, and you could be in a great position to take advantage of that. So absolutely don't go and put yourself in financial distress by hiring someone. But if right now things are good, don't assume they're not going to be not good in the future.
Yeah, I think we just had a session with a client actually where we were talking about this. Should they hire now or wait? And essentially what we said to them is, do you have 3 months of work ahead of you? And they do. They've got more than 3 months as it stands. Do you then have a marketing plan in place to support the continuation of that 3 months? So it's always trickling through. Yes, they do. Then now is the right time to hire. So for some businesses, that might narrow down to 1 month or 2 months. For most businesses, they can sustain a booked out period of 2 to 3 months. If you can then back that up with the marketing to roll it through, then now really is a good time to start to think about, okay, can I put someone on to support me through this process so that I can work towards reaching my goals? So I think one of the things with fear is it prevents us from remembering what our goals are and keeping that top of mind. Instead, we get consumed by the fear, and it's the media's job to make us scared of everything. And if we all stop and have a think and a look at recent history, COVID times, for most businesses, not all, I certainly don't want to take away from those businesses that really, really suffered. And for a lot of trade businesses, they really prospered through that time. There were some difficult times, of course. However, they did prosper. There were other negative flow-ons that I think we're all now much more adept to being able to work through. And I don't see those happening for us moving into this next 12 to 18-month cycle. You also raised a really good point about it being normally really quiet for the first quarter. It's normally quiet when we've just got the kids back to school. Then it's Australia Day, and then we just start to settle in, and all of a sudden when Easter is looming, people are not thinking about what they want to have done. Instead, they're just busy existing.
And we compare it to the back half of the year too, where everyone wants their renovations finished on time, they want their back room tiled, they want the blinds up, they want all the things for Christmas. They've done it all in December or November, hopefully in October. So they're finished with that now. So they're not thinking about the next project. But trade businesses are in such a unique position where no matter what the market is doing, it just shifts and changes the types of projects you're going to be taking on and the locations you might be doing them in. But someone is always needing support from the trades.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Kristy-Lee, probably leads me to the question around redundancies or putting people off if business does come to a point where, okay, I don't have my 3 months booked out in advance anymore. In fact, the phone's not ringing as much. I've got enough to sustain maybe myself and one other, but I've got a third or a fourth team member. Is it hard to put somebody off if that's the case for us in business?
No, no, it's really not. I would say don't rush into it and don't leave it too long as well, because sometimes we rush into it and then we're like, we don't have enough people to do the work that we've got. And sometimes we leave it too long and it really puts financial stress on the business. But we're quite fortunate in regards to our legislation that there is some protections in place for small businesses, which are businesses who employ 14 or fewer employees, including casuals. And that is that we don't pay redundancy pay generally. So there are some industry specifics, but as a broad rule, small businesses don't pay redundancy pay. Now, the building and construction trade side, there is an exception to that, and there is redundancy payment. But for our plumbers and our sparkies, there's generally no redundancy payment if you're a small business. So you're only needing to factor in notice periods and annual leave accruals and potentially long service leave if that applies as well. So it's not difficult, but there is a really clear process that you have to follow. And if you don't follow it, you do risk being brought with an unfair dismissal claim. So it's called a consultation process, and it feels a little bit silly to do because you're only doing it after a decision's been made, and it feels a little bit awkward, but Fair Work are very clear that that is a requirement, that you have to genuinely consult, that you have to genuinely consider what the employee is suggesting to combat this situation before you make a final decision. And it is a really important process you do need to follow to ensure that you're doing it correctly. The other thing I'd say as well, if you're feeling the pinch and you're really feeling like this might be it, talk to your team. Have a conversation with people. Let them know, look, at the moment, work's looking a little bit concerning, but I'm confident, or I've got these, projects potentially in the pipeline. Would you be open to reducing your hours for a couple of months? And you'd actually be surprised. Some people will say, actually, I was pretty keen to take a break. Why don't I just have a month off? I want to go traveling. You don't have to pay the leave. We'll just leave that for when I get back.
Yep.
Some people will say, look, I'd be really happy to work 4 days a week. That'd be great.
Yeah. And
that might just reduce that pressure on your cash flow enough to get you through. So don't rule out talking to your team to try and figure out some really creative alternatives.
We saw a lot of that during COVID as well. It didn't surprise me because we've been working with teams for so long. You know that they're generally quite open to other possibilities. Rather than losing their job. They don't particularly want to lose their job. They enjoy working with you. So what are the other opportunities we can explore to ensure that this can sustain itself moving forward? So I think that having those open and honest conversations can really drive a result that you're looking for rather than everybody being scared.
Yeah.
Because not only are you frightened as a business owner, your team are also frightened. In fact, they have an earning cap as a team member. They can't necessarily go out and find more work or drive more productivity to earn more money like you can as a business owner. So their fear is probably even higher than yours in most cases. It's different. It's all relative. I don't want to dismiss the fear that anybody feels. However, what it does do is having those open and honest conversations means that they can start to feel more secure and not feel as though, oh, maybe I should be looking around because this is looking a little shaky, and prevent a lot of that dissatisfaction for them as well, which I think is a big part of what you work with, Kristy-Lee, around, what do I do now that I've got this great person? How do I keep them here? How do I make them want to stay with me? Do you have a few quick and easily implemented tips there?
Look, once you've got great people, the key is to keep them engaged and motivated. And that comes down to knowing them and caring about what's important to them and giving them the things that matter to them. So you've got to be having conversations with your people to understand what are their goals, what are their aspirations personally, and can you line those things up? And the key is, I think the biggest trap that we fall into when we're trying to motivate people and keep them engaged is we think that throwing money at them and gifts and rewards is the answer, and it doesn't work. And then you get frustrated and you feel resentful that they're not appreciating these grand gestures, because the reality is if they're not internally, or we call it intrinsically motivated, none of that matters. You can throw as much money at the wall as you like and it's not going to do a thing to motivate them. So that underlying piece of motivation is their actual psychological commitment to the job and to the business. And you've really got to get them engaged in their future in the business, the vision in terms of what you're trying to achieve. Is it growth? Is it working with amazing, exciting projects and different suppliers? What can excite them about what the future holds for them in the business? And just keeping that really closely monitored and tying things to that, that's your gold. Saying thank you when they do a great job, acknowledging things. It's that kind of stuff that matters to our team way more. Giving them clear direction. Giving them clear scope to say, this is what success looks like, and acknowledging it when it happens. It's that simple. It's the simple things that are the most impactful.
I would encourage you to think about the other relationships you have in your life. If you're a tradie wife, you obviously had a tradie. How much better is that relationship where there is some significance given to them, where they feel valued and they feel important? Or even think about yourself, in your role as a tradie wife, many of us are doing unpaid work. Many of us have fallen into a position that we don't necessarily have wanted in the beginning, and maybe we're just there to help out. And I would encourage you to think about how good you feel when you get a little bit of significance, when your partner comes home and says, hey, I can't believe you got that over the line. It's all finished and done. I really appreciate and value that. Or thanks, love. That's for many of them. That might be as good as we get, but it's a good start, right? It does make you feel so much better. Your team are exactly the same. They want to know that they are appreciated well and truly above the money stuff. Now, the money stuff is important. It shouldn't be discounted, of course. I I don't think I know any employee anywhere that doesn't know exactly how much money they need to make each week, so that they can cover all of their expenses. And providing you're doing that and you're adding significance, suddenly you're having much better quality conversations, you're getting better outcomes for them and for you, which all helps you in turn create that business and facilitate some of those goals that you're looking for. For most of our people, it's time profit, which looks like holidays or flexibility to go and watch the kids on a sport day, or it's money profit so that we can start to pay other people to do some of the things that we are currently feeling overwhelmed with. You have those opportunities at your fingertips just by, I guess, taking care of your team and providing a bit of significance for them so they feel valuable on a day-to-day. Kristy-Lee, we were having a bit of a wow moment, I want to call it, prior to pressing record about AI and what amazing things it can be doing for our small business owners. I'm sorry to any copywriters that are listening. I understand the fear that you must be feeling. This stuff is really powerful. And I encourage you all, if you haven't yet had a bit of a play around with something like ChatGPT, or there are many other versions available to you there to do some of your copywriting for you, you just give it a play. It's incredible what you can do with it. And there's a lot of training out there to help you maximize how to get those results. But I wondered if you could share some of the things you're seeing your clients use that kind of AI for in terms of their HR.
Yeah, AI is just blowing my mind at the moment. I love it. I love all the new toys that are coming out. And honestly, this is just the beginning. So it is going to change the way we do things. And as you and I were just saying, we need to figure out how to leverage that rather than be scared of it, because there's a lot going on. But the simplest one that I'm seeing a lot of my clients use is ChatGPT. Now, if you're not familiar with that, it's free. There is a paid version, but there's a free version. It's a copy tool. Basically, it's a text tool that has been trained or created to communicate like a human. And I kind of quite fun when I'm playing with it. I'm really polite to ChatGPT and it's polite back to me. Could you please write me blah, blah, blah. So, and you'll get, sure, no problems. Here you go. Yeah. But from a HR perspective, I have had clients, and I personally have written position descriptions using ChatGPT that have been surprisingly good. You know, I wasn't sure what quality I'd get. Job advertisements, absolutely, using ChatGPT. Social posts, which isn't necessarily HR, but if you're promoting, you know, that you've got a position available, you'd be using it for that. I haven't yet tried policies, but I'm going to give it a go and see how it works. And it's amazing. And I think the biggest benefit is the time saver from that blank screen. I don't know where to start, or even if you've got a copy of a template of a position description, but what words do I actually start with? That starting point is where I found it really, really valuable. So recently I was writing a position description for lawyers. Now, I'm not a lawyer. The client couldn't tell me what they were doing every day. She's like, they're lawyers. Okay. And I just needed a starting point. Yeah. And so I just prompted ChatGPT to give it to me, and it gave me a starting point. And then I worked on it from there. It wasn't the final product, but it was a great starting point where otherwise I might have been stuck for 15 minutes before I started to get the right words out. Yeah. I've got a client that has created her position descriptions and really gone granular. So she said, what is a position profile overview for my warehouse assistant role? So she's taken the sections of the position description and really nutted them out. And again, she would have read it and the duties list wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have been an excellent starting point. Yeah. And I think for me, it's that time saving of anything you've got to create. Yes. But what I will say, if you do ask it for data and stats and legal things, please go and fact check that, because it is very powerful at creating content that is 100% plausible, but not always true. It's not 100% accurate, that's for sure. No, you read it and you think, oh, yeah, that must be right, and you go and check it, not right. No. So if you're asking anything that is fact-driven, like what does the award say about X, Y, and Z, don't just trust ChatGPT. Go and check that for yourself to make sure that's accurate. But for that shortcut of starting to create a document that you need for HR purposes, it's brilliant. And the other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is video and voice AI tools. And you're going to be able to create content that is your own voice. You're going to be able to type some text in, and it's going to generate a video that sounds like you. And I'm thinking, you know, in terms of reaching out to applicants, in terms of giving a client a quote that's going to sound super professional and in video or text or voice format that you don't have to create. It's going to be amazing.
I can see a lot of use for that in creating procedures.
Yes.
So a lot of the things, there are some real key areas that lots of business owners get stuck on. And one of those is that systemization of business. And so policies and procedures often feel too heavy and too much. One of the key ways we encourage people to get started is just to record a voice note on what they're doing, or do a screen share on their computer of what they're actually doing and talk through it as they go. It won't be perfect, but it's your first step, version 1. And I can see a lot of power with this AI in creating some of those procedures so that because there's those 3 types of learners, right? We need something they can see, something they can read, and something they can hear. AI can take care of all of that and polish it up for you so that you get a better understanding for your team members around what some of those procedures are, as well as then having written the policies that go hand in hand with the procedures. You've got your job description. We've got an organizational chart. They can even create, so we use employee scorecards for our team. So that on a quarterly basis, we're doing a review. They could create a quarterly scorecard for you. They could give you some KPIs for your team to be working towards. It's incredible the power of this technology to help, as you say, with those starting points, but also refine. So one of the demonstrations I had recently was around somebody who wasn't a copywriter. So think about you as a tradie wife, had written a blog post and they wanted that blog post to be sharpened up a little bit. So they put it through ChatGPT, asked for it to be edited, asked for it then to be written in a more formal tone, asked for it then to be a little more salesy. Like you can just keep prompting it and refine it and refine it till you get what you like.
Yes.
And they came out with just the most amazing blog post that would really work to start to convert some of the people that were hitting up their website. So the opportunity to everybody with what they can do with this technology that is freely available for now is just incredible in terms of the time saving. And as you referenced, that starting point to get them moving forward rather than feeling stuck, because I feel quite stuck a lot of the time, unfortunately.
We all do.
Yeah,
we all do. And I think that the new technology coming, we're going to be able to take those screen share videos we've created, put it into an AI tool and tell it to create a procedure for that in written form, a video, all the different elements from one piece of source content that you've created. And you're absolutely right. The prompts that you put into these systems determine the quality of what you're going to get out. So the more specific you can be about in this tone, for this style, this many word blog, whatever it is, it will start to really tailor that for you. And I guess we should talk about the converse side of AI, and that is some of the risks that we might think about. And the one that it's really come to my mind recently was I was helping an electrical and solar business in Victoria, and they were recruiting for a marketing person. And this one particular applicant was very keen for the role and very quickly submitted a technical piece of writing on solar. Because I'm in the midst of all this AI excitement, my immediate response was, did they actually write that? Now, that shouldn't be my immediate response. And I'm sure she did. She was a very good writer. But we do need to think about the fact that if we're using these tools, so are the people we're dealing with.
Yes.
So you want to be extra vigilant in your recruitment process, because they may not have written that beautifully drafted cover letter that you thought was amazing. ChatGPT may have written it, or any of the other AI tools. There's lots of them out there. We've already had issues with professional resume writers writing resumes that look amazing, but the person's not able to do those things.
No.
So this is just making it easier for people to access that. And so we need to be vigilant as employers around not just accepting that on face value and finding different ways to assess someone's suitability.
Maybe we should talk about interviewing techniques, because it's not an area that I don't think any of us are taught. I was really lucky to have spent my early years working through pharmacy and doing quite a lot of work around management and recruiting, etc. And so I feel blessed to have picked up some incredible tips that there's only been once that have failed me, that somebody was able to get past some of those key learnings I had. And I reckon you'd have a bunch more than I would have, Kristy-Lee. Can you give us some hints for the interview process? What sort of questions to ask? Should we do group interviews or solo interviews? Should we be doing them over Zoom, or should we be getting them in front of us?
Great question. Interviews are the most powerful tool that you have at your disposal when it comes to choosing who to hire in your business. Yet people ask not great questions, to be honest, in their interviews, and wonder why they keep getting the decisions wrong. So an interview's success depends entirely on the quality of the questions that you ask in that interview. Now, if you're recruiting for your trade business, get them in person, 1,000%, because you're going to be working with them in person.
That's right.
If you were hiring for a virtual assistant role in your business, you could definitely do that interview on Zoom, no problems at all. So think about the role and whether being in person is going to be part of the role. And if it is, absolutely interview in person. Mm-hmm. I will sometimes do a phone or a Zoom interview first, so I'm only meeting the top 2 or 3 people, of course, but definitely be getting them in person. And I think with your interview, there's a few key types of questions you want to be asking. I'm always going through someone's resume in an interview. And one of the questions I ask every single time without fail is, why did you leave that position?
Yes.
And I ask it for every position that they've left. Yep. Because it tells us about patterns of behaviour. If they've left the last 5 jobs because they got bored, what do you think is about to happen? Yes. They're going to get bored. So we're looking for patterns of behaviour. Maybe they've got lots of personality clashes in there, or they weren't feeling acknowledged 5 times over. Mm-hmm. There's some red flags you can really pick up by asking that question. Mm-hmm. I'm also unpicking the roles a little bit and understanding the structure of the team. Is it similar to my team? Are they doing a similar role to what they're going to be doing in this business? Are they working on similar projects? Because I know for a lot in the trades business, if someone's only working on new builds, when they come into a business that is doing a lot of renovations or old buildings, they can't troubleshoot and problem solve to the same level that we need them to. So you want to be getting that understanding. If they worked in a massive business, how are they going to cope working in a small team of 5? Because that's a very different dynamic. And a lot of people don't cope with it very well, to be honest. So I'm going through their resume and unpicking and learning. And you want to get really curious when you're going through that part of the process. And if you ask a question and you think, oh, that's interesting, don't just leave it. Keep asking more questions. Ask for more information. Just dig a little deeper. So definitely have that curiosity lens on. I'm also asking questions that give me an indication how they work and what sort of process they've gone through in the past. So we call these behavioural-based questions, but you're asking for a situation. So tell me about a time when you went to the client's premises and they were really angry and aggressive towards you and weren't happy because you were 5 minutes late. How did you handle that situation? How did you resolve it? What did you do? And what would you do different next time? Because you want to know whether they've learned anything in this process. And you definitely want to bed, at least 3 to 5 of that style of question throughout the interview for the 5 top things that you know are important in your role. And then you're talking about learning about them. What's important to them? I often ask, what are the 3 most important things in the next role that you take on? It could be about the company, about the role, about the people. What's the top 3? Whatever they say first is their top priority.
Yeah.
It's really important that I'm with people that I enjoy working with. Okay. Is this a right cultural fit? Then that needs to be your focus, because if it's not, they're not going to stay.
Yes.
Or I really want challenge. I want to work on these types of projects. Can you offer that? Because if you can't, they're not going to stay. So listen for those clues, definitely. And just getting a feel for them. And you've got to be careful. There's lots of rules. You can't ask about family and you can't ask about this and that, but you do want to get to know them. And the more you get them to open up, the easier that is. So if there's a relatable thing that you sort of want to open up, maybe, they've got young kids, they've kind of disclosed that, and you're curious about the care arrangements. Yep. You can't ask that question.
Sure.
But you can say, I know with my kids, they loved after school care. What about your kids? So you've got to be a little bit clever about how you ask some of those questions. Yeah. But I find these days most people are really open to talking about what they want and their personal situation without fear about the job. So I find it much less of an issue these days.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're looking for a good fit for them, for them, just like we're looking for a good fit for us in our business. There's one other tip that I learned that it still amazes me, the power that it has, and that is quite simply the power of the pause. When we're all really nervous, and we're nervous as business owners doing the interview, and the person in front of you is really nervous about being there and whether they're making the right impression or not, we tend to keep talking to fill the gaps. And as the business owner, you need to be strong enough not to do that. So that's the power of the pause. And what it does is it allows the person in front of you to feel just uncomfortable enough so they keep talking. They tend to want to fill the space, and that's where a lot of good gold nuggets come out. It's a hard thing to do. Maintaining eye contact with them, waiting for them to continue to speak is really uncomfortable.
Yep.
And yet that's where the gold is in terms of whether this person's going to be right for you and your business, whether they're going to be the right fit. Some of those other key areas like you addressed, it's easy to frame the answer to a question in the beginning, and then we get left with this space and it's like, oh, I haven't answered it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll tell you about when I had a disagreement with one of the team members, or maybe I'll tell you about the time I left some important tool on the top of the house or something similar. They just tend to fill it, and that's going to give you more information than you currently are able to get if you are then filling the space after each of the questions. It's one of my favorite.
I love that. And I also suggest using that in every meeting you have with one of your team. I'm constantly telling my members, you need to have a difficult conversation, but don't just get it done. Don't feel the need to talk because you're distilling the message. When you start filling the gaps. Just stop and let them respond.
That's a great point. I love that. That's really important. Kristy-Lee, there have been some there are some coming. There have been some legislative changes in the HR space. Can you talk us through a couple of those that our business owners would need to be aware of?
Yeah, holy Julie, we are in a big state of change when it comes to industrial relations in Australia, and probably the biggest change since the Fair Work Act came into play, to be honest. And this is just the start of the changes. So we know every time there's a kind of change in federal politics, the new government has an agenda, of course. And so we're coming into a Labor government. Their agenda is very different to a Liberal government. And that's really as simple as where it's come from. The Labor government has an agenda where they want to create better pay across the board and secure jobs. It's called the Secure Jobs Better Pay Bill, I think is exactly what it's called. So that's the focus. So once we understand that's the focus, it all starts to make sense. So they're looking to push wages up and to make jobs more secure for workers. And they're doing an and to get rid of this gender pay gap issue as well. That's also part of the agenda. So some of the key changes that have already come into place is there is now a ban on pay secrecy clauses in employment contracts. So if you've got an old contract, it is almost certain to have a clause in the remuneration clause that says you may not discuss your pay with other people. They're now banned. So if there's been any change in the employment relationship from the 6th of December 2022, issue a new contract and get rid of that clause is my best advice. If nothing's changed, that clause just becomes null and void, so you don't need to stress. But if you put that clause in a contract now, anytime after the 6th of June, there's going to be huge fines. They're really going hard on this.
Wow.
So employees now have a right, so it's a protected workplace right, to discuss and disclose their pay and their remuneration package, however that's formed, whether there's benefits, cars, different hours, whatever makes up that package, with anyone they like, including their colleagues, including their peers at another company, including the suppliers that you're talking to, anyone. Wow. They have a right that is totally protected that they can talk about that to anyone they like. They also have a right to ask other people about their pay. Now, that person doesn't have to disclose it, of course, but they could be asking anyone on your team or with a colleague anywhere about their pay. So you can't do anything about that. If you try and prevent it in any way, shape or form, you can get fined and a whole range of other legal proceedings can be taken against you. So it's protected, which is interesting. I think for most of us as employers, it's a little uncomfortable, to be honest. I like it in contracts. I don't want my team talking about pay. But it is what it is, and we don't have a choice. And that came into effect on the 6th of December, 2022. So we're living with that now. The second change that has come into, well, there's two more that have come into effect, the introduction of paid family and domestic violence leave.
Yes.
So all employees get 10 days paid or access to 10 days paid family and domestic violence leave every year. That started in February for most businesses. It's held off until the beginning of August for small businesses, so 14 or fewer employees. So you don't have to worry about it yet if you're a small business. But understand from that date in August, 10 days will automatically be available as a whole lump sum that they can take if they're experiencing family and domestic violence leave, and they need to do something to deal with that can't be done outside of work hours, like finding accommodation, seeing a psychologist, seeing a financial planner, seeing their accountant, a doctor, whoever, whatever they need to do, they have access to that leave. Now, interestingly, it's not prorated for part-timers, and casuals have access to it as well.
Wow.
So that's very unusual for paid leave. So it is an entitlement everyone has access to. And it just tops up to the 10 days at the anniversary of whenever it kicked in, or at the anniversary of their start date if they're starting afterwards. So it doesn't accrue like annual leave and sick leave. It just tops back up to the 10 days if they do use any of it. And it's not paid out when they leave the business. So that's been a big change. In line with that as well, sort of in the same vein, we've had changes to sexual harassment laws, and these have just been rolled out early March, so very, very recent. And employers now have what we call a positive obligation to prevent sexual harassment at work. And so just responding to a complaint of sexual harassment no longer cuts it. Employers have a positive obligation to have a policy, have provided training around what is sexual harassment and why you can't do it, to have proactively done something. Now, this is a bit of a grey area because it's not very clear what positive action means. And so as experts, we're still working it out. But depending on the size of your business will depend what would be a reasonable measure. But I would say at the very least, a policy and some training would be the minimum criteria to have taken positive action.
It's a lot of change in a small period of time.
Yeah. And they aren't the biggest ones. So the biggest change we've got coming is a change to enterprise bargaining laws in Australia. And I think this could be epically stressful for many businesses.
Yeah.
So what we're going to see, the biggest change is this concept of a single interest enterprise bargaining agreement where multiple employers with a common thread of some sort, let's say a group of plumbers, decide they want to get together and bargain in an enterprise bargaining agreement. They'll be able to do so. Now, there are some availability for that now, but this is going to really amp it up. The second part of that is that there is going to be some options in some industries, and trades generally are excluded from this, which is good, where employers are going to be, or unions are going to be able to loop in employers after the fact that didn't ever want to be part of that agreement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's particularly going to be our care sectors, our lower paid sectors.
Right.
Those kind of sectors are the target there. Yeah. And of course, we don't know how it's going to play out yet, but my prediction is it's going to be really problematic. The intention of the government is to try and have as many people under enterprise bargaining agreements as possible.
Okay.
So they're kind of forcing your hand to either create your own or risk getting looped into a multi-employer situation. And of course, once you're in a multi-employer situation, you've got employees from other businesses voting.
Yes.
Messy. But trades are generally excluded from that loop-in situation, so we won't need to worry about that so much for you guys, but just be aware it's coming. June is when it really starts to kick in, and most of us are kind of waiting to see what the unions are going to do, what's going to happen, and we're just going to keep a really close eye on it. I'm not advising people to rush out and secure themselves an enterprise bargaining agreement necessarily. But if it is something you're concerned about, I would start talking to some experts and getting some advice now rather than waiting.
Yes, we need to be prepared. The element of surprise is never good for anybody. So being prepared and having some open conversations, I think, is really going to set you ahead of the pack rather than finding yourself in an uncomfortable position that you lack control over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's time to reach out and get some help, which is a perfect time to ask you, Kristy-Lee, how do our listeners find you if they would like some assistance with their HR? And can I just say how important it is to get the right help in place in this area? As somebody who has had some struggles with employees once or twice, it is really important to have the right advice so that you are setting yourself up for success in terms of exiting the person at the time that we need to exit, or making sure that everything is in place. We're ticking all of those legal boxes when we do put them on, and then some support around ensuring that we've got the right process to have them stick around so they're not disappearing after 3 months, because it's very expensive to hire. Kristy-Lee, where do our listeners find you to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. You can contact me on any of the socials. I'm on there as Kristy-Lee Billett, or just head over to peoplepoweredbusiness.com.au and you can book an inquiry call with me to have a chat, or just send in an email and see how I can help.
I'll make sure that all of those links are in the show notes for you all so you can quickly access Kristy-Lee, because I think you're going to need it this year.
There's a few things going on.
And I'll also make sure we have an AI checklist to help you understand how to use it in your business. I'll make sure that's in the show notes for all of our listeners as well. If you're interested, please just click through there. That'll perhaps get you started exploring what you can do with this amazing technology that's available to us all for free for the most part right now. I'm sure at some point in time, they're going to understand the power of that, and we'll all be paying a small subscription fee And rightly so. It's pretty incredible when you think about how much we've all been paying for copywriting for a long time. And hey, if you're a copywriter listening, I'm really sorry. Please reach out. Let's find a way to help support you in another direction. I can't go without being stressed that the AI will never get it perfect, and it's still going to be up to you as a business owner to use a copywriter to help you refine it, or to utilize your own skills to refine what is being written. It is not the golden bullet that many of us would like, but it is going to get us very close to where we want to be.
Yeah. And if you don't have a copywriter, it's a great starting point. And if you do have one, which is what I've done, I'm taking the basic stuff off her and giving her much more high-level work and doing the rest of the basic stuff she was doing on AI. So you can reshuffle some things to get a whole lot more out too.
Absolutely love that. Thank you, Kristy-Lee. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And we're going to have you back later in the year because there's some more changes coming that we'll need to keep talking about, trying to educate the people where we can. Thank you for being here. Real pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great to be here.
Anytime. Thanks for listening.